Welcome to Canada's most irreverent talk show. This is the Andrew Lawton Show, brought to you by True North.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Andrew Lawton Show here on True North. It is Tuesday, August 8th, Canada's most irreverent talk show. We are live just after 4:02 Eastern Time, in case you are unaware of what time it is, in which case I am blissfully aware of the time. So anyway, if you hear a little bit of background noise going on, I should probably apologize in advance. We are having I can't tell you what's going on without telling you a whole story that I'll try to condense here, but we are getting a new water heater installed, and I think at my last glance, it is installed, and they're just doing some finishing touches and whatnot. But the reason I live in Ontario, so please don't hold it against me. Ontario has this very uniquely Ontario scam in which people, I presume a majority of the province, certainly a large chunk, rent their water heaters. Now, I've been going through my whole life thinking this was the natural order of things and thinking this is just what everyone in Canada did. You just paid your $30 a month and you use someone else's water heater, and if it breaks down, they come in and replace it. And it came up only 2 or 3 months ago that I was speaking to someone from Alberta who legitimately had never heard of this. They never in their entire life had heard of the idea of someone renting a water heater. And this person had, I think, a fairly legitimate level of incredulousness at it, because they're like, well, you don't rent your washer and dryer, you don't rent your dishwasher, you don't rent your oven, and so on. And as I was trying to explain this thing, I realized how little sense it made. And it's not that you're not allowed to own a water heater in Ontario. You can buy one if you want. But it just seems like a lot of people have just been suckered into this rental thing. Anyway, so we bought our house about 3 years ago, and the old owners had a rental agreement, and just in all of the things that you have to pay for when you move into a place, buying a new water heater just didn't seem like something we wanted to do. So we just sort of paid the monthly fee, and I think I set up auto billing and just sort of forgot about it until a couple of weeks ago. No, it was about a month ago, I guess. Our air conditioner, we had to get some maintenance done on it anyway. So the company that rents us the water heater is also the company that does the maintenance on the air conditioner, apparently. So we own the air conditioner. That we don't rent. Don't worry. So we had them come by, and they tried to put us on this stupid maintenance plan where they're like, well, for $10 a month, you can get your annual maintenance done on the air conditioner. And I said, well, but that's more than if I just pay for you to come and do the maintenance on the air conditioner. So no, I don't want this plan. And then they said, okay, but you should get the plan. And I said, no, I don't want the plan. So they come and do the air conditioner maintenance, and then they ask again if I want the plan, and I said no. And then on my next bill, I've been charged $10 for maintenance plan, in addition to the service charge of $100. And I was so annoyed by the company trying to gouge me for $10 that I just decided I would screw them out of the $35 they've been getting from me every month for the water heater. So I think it was the very next day I called and asked for a water heater, which we're now getting installed. And I'm so ashamed of it, because if I look at what I've been paying for the last 3 years for someone else's water heater, it is a big chunk of what I'm paying today for my own water heater. And I've never in the last 3 years had to have any repair done or replacement. And this one, maybe the joke will be on me if in a week's time it just goes on the fritz or whatever. But anyway, I was asking a couple of my colleagues before I started the show here, because they live all over the country. I said, are any of you aware of this? And they all think I'm insane and the biggest sucker whatsoever for having rented something when I don't rent any other appliances. So if you are in Ontario and you are paying for a water heater, there is a better way. There is another world outside of this that you don't know. And no, I'm not getting a commission. I'm not selling water heaters. Maybe we should do a True North branded water heater and try to just outfit Ontarians, and we'll give them water heater freedom. But all of this, I'm looking here. Frank in the chat says, as a Manitoba, I don't even know what that word is. A Manitoba-ian? What is someone from Manitoba called, actually? I realize I just don't talk about them often enough. Manitoba-ian? I don't know. It's spelt weird. But he says, we don't rent our water heaters here either. We buy them and install them ourselves. Yeah, well, I'm like a little Ontario Nancy boy, so I didn't install my water heater. I've had someone that is far better at that doing that. Yeah, no, it's Manitoban. Yeah, why? This guy just added like an I in there. It's totally Manitoban. I don't know why I forgot the demonym for Manitoba. Anyway, I'm getting like a whole bunch of people saying they have gotten rid of the rentals, so they're all miles above me. Anyway, miles ahead of me and above me. You never know. Okay, that's my little rant of the day here about how, once again, Ontarians are getting screwed. Albertans figured this out a long time ago. They don't have rats and they don't have rented water heaters, and they are a freer people for it. In any event, a big story today. No, it's not my water heater. You may have seen this photo from Justin Trudeau, where it is, now we've got like the rental water heater apologists here saying they're built to a higher standard than the ones you buy. Well, I'm not sure that's true, actually, but nevertheless, it's an asset that now I own. So I can be proud of my water heater. I can hug my water heater and just, draw a smiley face on it if I want. In any case, big hot water heater has got to him. My colleague Phil has. It's the big hot water heater rental lobby is out in full force today. Anyway, going on to serious business here. Not that this isn't serious for people. Justin Trudeau and his son Xavier are on Team Barbie. Yeah, I don't know if you saw this photo. Our prime minister decided he would take in a movie over the weekend, and there is Justin Trudeau and his son. We are Team Barbie, wearing their... people were calling this a pink shirt that both of them were wearing. If I'm being technical, I think Justin Trudeau's shirt is more aptly described as coral than pink. Maybe it's not... No, it's not... Yeah, it's a little bit... Yeah, it's got that orange hue that coral does. I don't know if we put coral in the category of pink, but nevertheless, Justin Trudeau's coral/pink hoodie, Xavier's hot pink t-shirt, the two of them on Team Barbie, a father-son duo taken in a nice movie. I could not care less about this. I told you last week that I saw the Barbie movie on opening weekend, and well, I went in expecting it to be terrible. I left thinking it was tolerable. It was certainly not as horrendously woke as a lot of people were pretending. And I actually, if you saw Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire's commentary on this, I'm kind of on Michael Knowles' side on this, and that Barbie actually had, if you really look for it, a somewhat conservative message in the sense that it was mocking the performative wokeness. It was mocking the virtue signaling. It was mocking the very ideas that a lot of people think it was promoting. And I said at its core, Barbie also upholds the idea of a gender binary, which in this day and age, the woke refuse to do. It talks about at great length the fact that men and women are fundamentally different. So I didn't leave the Barbie movie thinking it was this grand, beautiful, cinematic brilliance. I didn't leave it thinking it was my favorite movie ever, but I said it actually is not a movie that conservatives have to just naturally hate. But now that Justin Trudeau is wearing his coral/pink sweatshirt and standing up and declaring himself on Team Barbie, I realize that it makes it easier to hate the whole thing here. But now, the question that I would ask here is, what is he getting at? Now, it is entirely possible that Justin Trudeau is just letting his inner Barbie soar here, and this is who he's been. Maybe he played with Barbies as a kid. Maybe he just has played with them as a father with his daughter or his children in general. I don't know. I don't really care. Maybe that's just who he is, and he's been waiting for this moment. Or perhaps it is about trolling us all. Now, it is very difficult to accuse Justin Trudeau of playing 3D chess, of actually doing anything that involves a level of self-awareness. But when you look at the responses to this, it kind of just triggered everyone. It triggered conservatives in this country. It triggered people in other countries. Piers Morgan, who is a bit insufferable himself for a number of reasons, not this necessarily, has come out and said he's so glad he's not Canadian, which of course basically gave his opponents the ammunition they needed of being able to turn around and say, well, we're glad you're not Canadian too. But whether you like Piers Morgan or not, he sort of doubled down. And then in true Canadian fashion, whenever anyone criticizes Canada, it's like a bat signal goes up for all the usual suspects. So the Toronto Star ran this whole thing about it and all of that. And now you've got Katie Telford pushing back. I mean, Katie Telford has just been like on a Twitter tear lately going after Conservatives. This is like catnip for her. And all of this is to say that it's caused a bit of a weird culture war, and it's brought out some very negative commentary. You've got people that are saying, oh, yeah, Justin Trudeau's gay, and oh, it's creepy for him and his son to do this. And I say, don't go down that road at all. Because what you're doing is, for starters, you're just stretching something that is entirely benign. The idea of a father and son going to a movie, whether it's Barbie or the new Beanie Babies movie or Oppenheimer, it should be encouraged. And we should actually encourage parents and their children to have a relationship, especially when your kid's a teen and you don't want anything to do with your parents. Even if they aren't Justin Trudeau, as a teen, you don't want anything to do with your parents. If your parent is Justin Trudeau, probably a bigger problem for you to have to contend with. But nevertheless, that should be encouraged. And then you flip to the other side of this, and you wonder who actually cares. And I don't think anyone is truly bothered by this. I think people just don't like that they see everything as being scripted and stilted and performative. And that is, I think, where we need to look at here, which is that this is a guy who less than a week ago announced a very difficult chapter in his life that was coming to an end, in the sense that he had said he was separating from his wife. And they wanted privacy. They wanted the kids and the family to be able to handle this all together. And they said they're going on a vacation this week. And then the leave my family alone, keep them out of it, becomes a, here's a picture of my son and I in pink shirts going to a movie. So putting your kid out there when you've said, hey, leave my kids alone as they deal with this difficult time, I think is actually quite problematic. And it shows that Justin Trudeau is wanting the best of both worlds. He's wanting to use his kids when it suits him and keep them away from everything when it doesn't. Now, to be clear, I do not believe kids are at all fair game in politics. I believe we should keep people's families out of it unless the family is pontificating on politics in a way that you can criticize the ideas on. And that is not what Xavier's doing. Xavier's offense is wearing a pink shirt, which he can actually pull off a little bit better than Justin Trudeau can do the coral hoodie, I think, and going to a movie with his dad. Now, if we want to talk about taste in cinema here, I'm not aware of Justin Trudeau broadcasting any other film preferences. So maybe he's a big cinephile and he's going to a new movie every week. I don't know. Jen Gerson, who is the co-founder of The Line alongside Matt Gurney, of which I'm a subscriber, would encourage you to subscribe as well. She said here, look, she just wants a world leader who picks Oppenheimer, and she doesn't think that's too much to ask. Yeah, I want the world leader that is going to steep him or herself in the historical nonfiction genre of Oppenheimer or anything else. That's what we want. And look, I think the whole point of the whole Barbieheimer thing was that people see both. So if he wants to do the doubleheader and say we're Team Barbie and then we're, I don't know if you want to be Team Oppenheimer necessarily, but Team Barbie and then Team Oppenheimer, that's one way to do it here. But that's not what he did. And he's trying to do the whole look at me thing, the woke performative virtue signaling, or he's also just trying to, as I said earlier, troll conservatives. And you know what? If that's his goal, it's probably going to work. And just to put some contrast on this here, if you want to talk about the tale of two leaders, Pierre Poilievre has put forward his own image today that is trying to really shatter, I think, the left's scary, evil, conservative boogeyman narrative about him. The ad that was released, very simple, very well shot. I don't know when it was put together, but it was a brief ad in which Pierre Poilievre, the family man, is put on offer for people. And I'm going to play this for you here because I want to talk about it for a couple minutes after.
Who is Pierre Poilievre? Many know him as the common sense leader the country needs. His school teacher parents know him as the boy they adopted and raised in their modest home in the suburbs of Calgary. His dad knows him as the son he took to early morning hockey games. His neighbors know him as the boy who used to deliver the morning newspaper. His children know him in Francais, Espanol, and English as Papa. And I know him as a guy who loves me for who I am, a Canadian who came to call Canada home, and his wife. So when Pierre says, it doesn't matter who you know, or where you're from, but rather who you are and where you're going. These aren't just empty words. He's lived it. Common sense. Let's bring it home.
That was Anna Poilievre narrating this ad about Pierre Poilievre the father, Pierre Poilievre the son, Pierre Poilievre the husband, really putting forward an ad that tells you absolutely nothing about what the guy will do as prime minister, but it also puts him in a light that a lot of people haven't seen him as. And I think right now we're seeing the Conservatives are trying to do, I don't know if it's a rebranding or just a branding of Poilievre, but they're trying to paint the guy in a light that's different than the evil, scary, conservative, racist, white supremacist, bigot, whatever, anti-this, anti-that thing that the Liberals are going to do. And it's a very lovely ad. I mean, I'm seeing from all these people that are part of like the big political establishment saying, ooh, if this is the side of Pierre Poilievre that people are going to see, he's going to be prime minister. And I don't think it's that easy. But I think there's a way that you can have your family highlighted that doesn't look like you're just trying to do what Trudeau and his son were doing in the Barbie photo, which is just like this weird sort of photo-op-y nonsense, even though a political ad is by its nature the most scripted, stilted, inauthentic thing that there can be. I mean, for all I know, they had 10 versions of those and they ran them all by the focus groups. The glasses on, the glasses off. Do we throw the daughter? Do we carry her? Do we, kiss them on the cheek? Like, whatever. Like, I don't know. But I'm saying that these things are not as natural and authentic as people may want to believe. But it still comes across as such. And that's what I think is kind of interesting here. Now, just for contrast, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals also released their own new campaign ad today. Take a look. Oh, wait, that might have been the wrong one. Sorry, I thought that was the Liberal campaign ad. No, it didn't have the, like, I'm Justin Trudeau and I approve this message. Although, if we are going to start drawing some comparisons here, I will say that the inauthentic, plastic, utopian world of Barbie is probably not far off from the liberal world of Justin Trudeau. Maybe that can be the real poll question we go for is, who sets a better standard for the real world, Barbie or Justin Trudeau? And I think Barbie is probably going to edge out Justin Trudeau on this one before long. But nevertheless, the point of all of this is that there is a way that you can have your family become a part of your brand. But if you do, you have to make sure that that is a part of you that is real. And the reason we saw so much I'll say finger wagging about Justin Trudeau last week from people is that they actually felt like Justin Trudeau had been stage managing this entire image for so many years. And I maintain what I said last week, which is that his separation is absolutely none of anyone's business. I think people should leave them alone. I think no matter how much you hate the guy and how aggrieved you feel about his and his government's policies and statements, his marriage is not the issue. His politics are, his policies are, and perhaps even his personality is, but not his wife and not his kids. But it is also, I think, worth pointing out, as we've been discussing, that Justin Trudeau is trying to have it both ways. When it was convenient, he'd bring the wife out on the campaign trail. She'd be up there on stage in London with Idris Elba, trying to promote the Trudeau brand. And then behind closed doors, as we know, clearly it was not an ideal situation for either of them. And I do not celebrate the breakdown of a family. And I think we all need to understand the costs that go along with families in politics. And Pierre Poilievre is in a similar situation. I don't know what the guy is like behind closed doors. I know a lot of people who have known his wife for many, many years and speak so highly of her. And I think the fact that she's actually taking an active role in his campaign in a way that the last two Conservative leaders' spouses haven't really as much. Rebecca O'Toole, lovely woman, I don't recall her ever narrating an ad or being in them except for just being there in the photos, similar to Jill Scheer and their kids. I know their kids were quite a bit younger as well. So we'll see what happens with this. But I do think that there is a cautionary tale here that people need to be aware of. And if we're going to stack up, Trudeau, the family man, against Pierre Poilievre, the family man, I think it's a legitimate question. Which one is more believable to Canadians? Which one are Canadians going to buy into? So that's the question there, and hopefully you enjoyed the Liberal campaign ad gag. I thought of that like 2 minutes before I did it, so glad Sean fired the right clip there and didn't go like, wait, we have a Liberal ad? I didn't know about this. No, that was the one. Let's turn to energy policy here, and just one point before I get to the real topic of the discussion here that I wanted to get to, is that the federal government is trying to use the carrot and stick thing, except it's a lot more stick than carrot, to force provinces to get their electricity grids to be so-called net zero. We've heard from the environment minister that the feds are considering tying a lot more tax credits to provinces overhauling their electricity system. Now, a lot of provinces are already doing this, but it's a slow process and it's a very costly process. And a lot of the activists, for example, don't like that Ontario's phase out of coal had to involve gas. Well, yeah, wind and solar are not at all doing what you think it's doing. They're not at all affordable. The activists seem to hate nuclear, despite the fact that it's one of the most clean and cost-efficient forms of energy generation. But not enough for the federal government, who thinks they need to try to extort more money out, or more action out of the provinces. And this is how they're going to do it. But then we go to the bigger picture here, which is the climate change catastrophism, as termed in a new book by Andy West with the Philosophy Foundation in London, which I learned of in a great column by Joe Oliver in the Financial Post. This is Canada's last fiscally responsible finance minister, and he joins me now. Joe, it's good to talk to you again. Thanks for coming back on the show. Now, you contended with a lot of the activists when you were in government and in cabinet. And the one thing that I would say is that enough was never enough. And we've seen the rhetoric really ramp up in recent years to the point where it's not just, yeah, we've got to do something about climate. It's the world is burning. We're all going to die.
There's no question. This is a catastrophe that is imminent, and we mustn't question it. And that's been building up for some time. You recall it was global warming, and then when it didn't warm, it became climate change. But there was always this intensity, almost a quasi religious fervor, or certainly an ideological fervor that was behind the rhetoric, and there were all sorts of incantations of doom, and priests and priestesses that were carrying the sacred message. And if you weren't on side, and totally on side, then of course you weren't just a skeptic, you were a denier.
Well, that term is actually quite an important one, because there are a lot of people, and I've interviewed many of them, who are believers in the fundamental idea that humans are causing global warming, that we need to change something. They're even supporters of carbon taxes. But people that don't go the full distance and the full demonization and the full anti-industrialization approach, and they're vilified. They're called deniers or lukewarmers sometimes. And I think that's interesting as well, that we've basically taken this scientific process, or what's supposed to be a scientific process, and have turned it into this us versus them, very polar political discussion.
Yeah, and you can only, the reason I wrote the article is because for some time I've been puzzled as to the fervor we were talking about, the prevalence of these beliefs, and the willingness to undergo really severe economic hardship, even though what we were doing wouldn't necessarily have any effect on the global temperature, and we know that in Canada. So I was always searching for what was the psychology behind it, and then when I read the book that you just referred to, which is a social psychological analysis of it, it really came together because it refers to culture, and culture is either religious or it's ideological. And either way, it doesn't permit any dissent. dissidence is not allowed. I mean, we talk a lot about diversity, but diversity of opinion, certainly on that issue and a lot of others, is simply intolerable. And I think that part of the fervor and the fundamental insecurity, I guess, is that it's based on allegedly a profound belief that the science is settled, and we've all heard that repeated endlessly. So there's no reason for anybody to listen to someone who might want to present scientists who have a different view. And let me tell you, there are thousands of them that do, even though they're in the minority. So, what explains that, and I think it goes to the ideological or religious commitment, and it just doesn't tolerate any dissent, and that's really unfortunate, because what we're being asked to do will in Canada, according to the RBC economics, cost the country $2 trillion to get to net zero by 2050, and the globe, according to McKinsey, will have to fork over $275 trillion. Well, this is a staggering amount, and frankly, I don't think there's any way that the Western democracies will tolerate that. And we're starting to see the resistance in Europe, where they've just gone through an energy crisis, and the cost of energy has ballooned, and they're confronted in a lot of cases, very tragically, with a choice between eating or heating. Well, that's not tolerable, and neither is depriving the world's poorest countries of energy, which is the only way out of abject poverty.
I fear you may be slightly optimistic in one sense. And my reason for thinking that is just looking at the last 3 years and how much economic harm people were willing to withstand to deal with what was presented as an emergency. And that was COVID. And whatever we think of how governments responded to that, what we learned there is that when something is an emergency or a crisis, all of the old rule books tend to get thrown away. And I feel that the branding of climate change as an emergency will license a lot of the same economic harm. People are totally willing to bankrupt certain sectors and certain businesses to fix this problem.
Well, don't confuse me totally with an optimist on this matter. But I think you got it right when you said they're prepared to see others suffer. But the question is, how much pain will the population overall be willing to? And polls indicate that it's not very much. And what we've got in Europe is a bit of a test case, because there the emergency is real. It's intense, and it's hurting people right across the board. The poor people always are the ones who are affected most adversely, but the middle class is suffering as well, and you see it in the polls. You see the Prime Minister of the UK backing off some of his policies. He's allowing a lot more drilling going on. He's backing off some of the restrictions on what kind of heating is permitted, and whether and in Europe they've defined natural gas as a non-emitting, as a clean source of energy. Well, you can argue with that or not, but the reason they did that is the practicality that if you don't have gas to back up wind and solar, you're going to have blackouts and brownouts, or you're going to use coal, and you're going to burn wood pellets. So when it comes to that kind of a crisis, and we're not there yet, but when it does, then I think people start changing their minds. And you can see that also in some of the U.S. States like California, the so-called blue states, that is the Democratic states, which have moved more to renewables and are paying the price in terms of very high energy costs and periodic brownouts.
Well, and I think to add to that, the one thing in Canada that's been so infuriating, and this goes back to the electricity stuff I was talking about at the outset of the segment here, is that they're wanting a solution that doesn't exist. And, yes, wind power and solar power exist, but the output, the cost, the efficiency, the reliability are simply not there. And it's not that they might not be in the future or some other magical energy source won't exist in the future, but they're not there now. And provinces like Ontario, like Alberta, have spent a lot of money to transition away from coal because that was deemed to be an environmental benefit. They have to rely on gas. In Ontario, you have the benefit of nuclear, but even that is derided by a lot of these same activists.
Yeah, that's right. And I've written about that because I have some background. I was the former chair of the independent electricity system operator, which basically runs the grid in Ontario. And the truth about renewables is that in a small amount, they can have a role. But as we know, the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. And so as you increase the amount, the proportion of energy that's coming from renewables, then the cost starts escalating dramatically and the reliability declines as well. You absolutely have to have natural gas as a backup because right now there isn't a technological alternative. We're hoping that one day battery power can provide the storage, but right now it's 4 hours, and that's certainly not long enough. But since most of the time neither of the two renewables, wind and solar, are operating, you have to have something to back it up. I mean, nuclear is absolutely fundamental, but it can't gear up in minutes. It takes days to shut down, and hydroelectric power is also critical, but it isn't as flexible as natural gas is. So we can't get off that, and I think the government of Ontario realizes that. They're not being explicit, but they talk about a pragmatic approach, and that's, I think, what they're talking about. But frankly, it's complete delusion for people to think that they can get off natural gas and rely entirely on renewables. It's been tried, and it's been a catastrophe, frankly.
And to bring it back to that catastrophism and that aspect of this, the one thing that I'll point out as well is that there are a lot of slogans and platitudes in this space. Now, I mean, obviously this exists in politics in general, but when we hear net zero by 2050, we've picked an arbitrary goal, net zero, we've picked an arbitrary year, 2050, and we've said everyone has to bend over backwards to make this happen. And it's not particularly feasible, as we're seeing, which is why even if Canada were to bend over backwards and cripple its economy and do all sorts of harmful things, we're talking about a net reduction of emissions in the world that is minimal, absolutely minimal compared to China, India, the United States. And that part is, I think, probably one of the most obvious points, but it's not really one acknowledged by governments.
Well, they don't want to talk about it, but Canada is 1.5% of global emissions. So we could go back to the Stone Age, and it wouldn't affect anything. Within a few weeks, China's increase in coal production would make up for that, and we would be running around with rocks and clubs, feeling self-righteous.
And our LED powered candles, because you can't even burn the flame. That's not allowed.
Really, this is not the way to go, and it's not. It's totally impractical, and Europe understands that. So I'm afraid it may take a real sort of emergency to get people off the idea that this is something that they have to pursue at the expense of the least advantaged people in the least advantaged countries. But maybe at some point practicality and guilt will start moving things over. And of course, another way that it could happen is with political change. Mm-hmm. Right now, it may be that it's too early to be sure, but the Liberal Party seems to be in its death throes, so that could obviously make a difference. But we're seeing this issue play out in other countries, and frankly, those who are carrying the green banner are not doing well politically in the last year or two.
No, and I think to put a fine point on this, your contrast of the Canadian experience and the European experience is an important one. And I would also say that even people that are very committed to the abstract idea of a climate emergency, when the energy crisis hits them, that's no longer an abstract emergency. That's something they have to contend with. And it's all well and good to say when everything is theoretical, oh yes, we need to, go and save the seaside property in the Maldives or whatever. But when you are faced with that decision and don't have the energy you need to run your business, or you can't afford to heat your home, it's not the abstract crisis that grabs you.
Well, the other thing that's really important to understand is that the science is not settled.
No.
There's a book written by Stephen Koonin, who was an undersecretary of energy and as a scientist in the Obama administration, and the title of his book is Unsettled. So that would indicate where he's coming from. But very recently, and this was quite significant, the chairman of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the body, the UN body that so many of these catastrophists look to for support. The chairman said, let's not exaggerate this. There isn't the emergency that frankly so many people are talking about, and you're paralyzing people with fear by claiming that almost nothing can be done. We got 12 years, 2 days, and 5 hours before it's the doom is sealed. Well, first of all, they've been making these projections forever. The models run hot. They've all been wrong. So why would we believe models which are consistently wrong the next time? Just maybe they don't have it right this time either. Someone who has a perfectly wrong record is not someone that normally inspires confidence. But the latest projections are getting even more strident, I think, because of the fact that they can't really back it up. And the reason that they're running hot is because they have certain relationships built into them mathematically that aren't proving out. So, I don't think we should lose sleep about an imminent climate emergency. I'm losing sleep about what the climate alarmists are doing to the economy. And
very well said.
And what they're doing to the Western world in its real existential battle, and that is an emergency, in its real existential battle with China, which is laughing all the way to the bank.
Very well said. Joe Oliver, Canada's last fiscally responsible finance minister, hopefully not forever. Joe, thanks very much for coming on. Always good to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too.
All right, Joe Oliver, and you should read his piece in the Financial Post called We Are in the Grip of Climate Change Catastrophism, and we certainly are. One thing I want to talk about just very briefly before we hit the road here metaphorically is this push by the media, which I absolutely love just because of the sheer brazen hypocrisy of it. Now, I'm going to talk about this in a bit more detail tomorrow. You may recall in C18, the government said that the big tech companies like Facebook and Google had to pay the mainstream media money. And the reason was because all the media got up in arms and started yelling and screaming, saying, Facebook's stealing our content. When we post a link on Facebook and Facebook lets people click that link and come to our website because we wanted them to come, that's theft. And I'm like, okay, we're relying on these people to give us an accurate, grounded vision of what's happening in the world. So take that aside for a moment. These people that are so detached from reality themselves that they think the dissemination of content that they disseminate is theft. Nevertheless, these people got their bluff called. They said to Facebook, how dare you? You're stealing from us. Facebook turned around and said, okay, fine. Let's accept at face value what you're saying. We will not allow your content to be stolen. We will not steal your content. We don't want to pay you, but we just won't take it. Well, now you have these very companies, the companies that were the most enthusiastically gung-ho for C18, now complaining to the Competition Bureau to apply prosecutorial powers against Facebook. I kid you not. The media companies have filed a joint complaint against Facebook. They want the Competition Bureau to throw the book at them. Now, the companies here are the Canadian Association of Broadcasters, which includes broadcast media, the News Media Canada, which includes newspapers, and CBC. Now, CBC applying any complaint to the Competition Bureau seems rather odd. This is a government monopoly that dares to say it wants to protect competition. That to me, talk about being devoid of reality. But even taking the CBC factor out of the question, you've got newspapers, broadcasters that are saying, okay, we now demand Facebook take our content and pay us. Well, which is it? Do you want them to stop stealing the content, or do you want them to steal the content? Oh no, they want you to pay for the content, which means it is not anything other than extortion. It is extortion. The mainstream media in this country are extorting big tech, and the government is facilitating it because there is never anyone more generous than someone who has access to the wallet of someone else. So the federal government gets to claim that it is being benevolent and generous. Well, it is spending Facebook's money and spending Google's money to prop up dying legacy media outlets. And we in Canada as taxpayers are supposed to be grateful that the government's sticking it to big tech and, oh, well, at least they're not charging us more in tax money. It is about what is right and what is wrong. And the government has decided that it wants to just penalize tech companies who have many flaws, many flaws, but just penalize them for the sake of subsidizing dying media and doing it in a way that it doesn't look like the government's just writing another big fat check. And how dare these outlets, which demanded their content be removed in the first place by virtue of supporting Bill C-18, turn around and now try to get this company prosecuted? Facebook, like I said, not perfect. I've got a lot of issues with big tech, but as I've often repeated, if it comes to a battle between big tech and big government, I am siding against the government every single day. That does it for us for today. We'll be back tomorrow with more of Canada's most irreverent talk show. This is the Andrew Lawton Show on True North. Thank you, God bless, and a good day to you all.
Thanks for listening to the Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.